Today we're going to talk about mental fitness with 4D Fit. My name is Scott Mickish. That's me on the left sitting on that pumpkin with my sister. What got me started in this direction was really the collection of all of my experiences throughout my career, all aimed at influencing behaviors with one major oversight: the function and impact on the brain. The missing piece that was never discussed or really addressed was brain health or brain function, and how you process and interpret those thoughts, feelings, and information through all of your senses can be influenced both internally and externally. So the big question is, how do we empower ourselves to influence our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors? And how do we remain aware of everything that's influencing us as well? Part of making mental fitness accessible is to provide an understandable framework. Again, because the brain can be so complex and hard to understand, and there's so many moving parts and pieces. So when it comes to fitness, it helps to break it down into kind of building blocks or fundamentals, and to reinforce the fact that we don't start at the top. We don't start with strength and endurance. We start with balance and flexibility, and really strengthening those neurological networks and connections, and making sure that our neurology, our body, our brain is healthy and prepared to do the work that we're demanding of it. And what I am striving to change is that the term fitness has really been monopolized by physical fitness. So it's oftentimes used synonymously with physical fitness. That really is only three-dimensional. We talk about biometrics, we talk about nutrition and movement, which are all important parts of fitness and well-being. But the problem is that how we traditionally focus on fitness is on the body, everything kind of below the neck. That's driven by everything above the neck. You can see why it can be frustrating when we are trying to reinforce these healthy behaviors to get to this response, whether it's building muscle, losing weight, and then people get discouraged when they don't get the response they're expecting. And that's really what makes physical fitness so difficult to maintain. The driver of behavior really being your brain. That is a missing piece in the equation that really should be flipped on its head. So we're really focusing on fitness head first and talking about how do we maintain our brain health to support everything else about our being. Another important piece is that, neurologically speaking, every brain that we can't see is as diverse as what we can see. But a lot of times that isn't addressed, and we kind of jump to the conclusion that everyone should think, feel, and react the same way and should be processing information the same way. And that's just not the case. Neurodiversity is a big focus area in the realm of diversity now too, that really covers not just mental health maintenance and management, but also cognitive variations and kind of neurological development. People on the autism spectrum, or those with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders that might react differently to different sensations and information, and have a different way of processing. And as I have entered the mental fitness realm, pretty much everything we've talked about just is not addressed and is not discussed. And the reasons keep adding up for why mental fitness is such a critical piece of well-being and maintaining healthy behaviors. 90% of illnesses and diseases are related to stress. 80% of deaths between the ages of 21 and 65 are related to lifestyle, which is predominantly behaviors. Suicide is on the rise. Eating disorders are on the rise. Cortisol impacts metabolism. Mood swings, increased anxiety, poor sleep and fatigue, higher risk of bone fractures and osteoporosis, acne changes, high blood pressure, higher susceptibility to infection. The list kind of goes on and on when we talk about the effect of stress, not only on your mind and your behaviors, but on your physiology and your body as well. The data is in that for every $1 spent on mental health, $4 is gained in health and productivity, let alone the millions who could live longer, healthier, happier, more productive lives. The million-dollar question is, why are healthful behaviors so hard? Influences are often in conflict in terms of we're receiving unhealthy influences, but expected to perform in healthy ways. Psychology Today is one of the predominant magazines that focuses on mental health. So I went back a couple of decades and collected the covers of the magazine. The articles cover a diverse range of people and issues, which is great. But what's on the cover and how you're branding it is influencing your audience in some way. Obviously, they're trying to target a certain demographic, but from a mental well-being perspective, the messages that they're sending as a marketing professional and a health professional myself, they're in conflict. And I know other psychologists who feel the same. It's startling, but it's something we need to be aware of. What is influencing our attitudes and behaviors when it comes to mental well-being? And the serious lack of diversity, the covers just perpetuate pretty much every ism that we're struggling with. Again, you go back to what is influencing our behaviors, that's a big one. How we see ourselves and how we see each other and how we see the importance of mental health and well-being. The brain and the body work together. So when it comes to mental fitness practices, there are physical practices that influence how you think, how you feel, and how your brain reacts. Your brain is sending out signals to your body. Your body is also sending back signals to your brain. The goal is to get them in balance, for your body to be influencing your brain in a healthy way, the same way that your brain is influencing your body in a healthy way with those neurological signals. So the motivation is really the focus of mental fitness, really understanding what's motivating you, what's influencing your motivation, and that you perceive what's possible. Because if you don't perceive the possibility, if you don't perceive that something has a benefit for you, that something is worth you striving for or worth you attempting or doing, you won't take the steps to get there. So the question to take away today, and what, with mental fitness, you really want to focus on is what's influencing your motivation internally and externally. Fitness really is not about physical ability. Fitness is really about, can you thrive and optimize yourself with whatever body, with whatever physical abilities you have by promoting brain health, healthy neurological activity, a healthy mental well-being. Repetitive behaviors and those repetitive neural connections forge those pathways. That also makes them hard to change. So if you have habits and behaviors that you're trying to change, it's not just that you're trying to form a new behavior, it's that you're trying to break away from those existing neural pathways. So it takes more effort to change behaviors once they're already formed. You have, 100 billion neurons in your brain. You have hundreds of neurotransmitters. And the really important part here isn't to remember all the names and all these scientific terms and terminology. It's really about, more about awareness, about how to take care of your brain. Just so you know that there's more going on under there than willpower. There's a lot going on in your body and your brain that are resulting in how you feel, how you think, and ultimately how you behave. The biggest areas that we focus on with mental fitness are the prefrontal cortex, which is the last part of your brain that develops around the age of 25, that is involved with critical thinking, working memory, comprehension, creativity, problem solving, empathy, emotional regulation, impulse control, that really operates the best when stress is reduced. So cortisol and stress throw off this part of your brain. And part of the reason is because the stress response of your brain is your amygdala. And they kind of work opposite each other. So when one is triggered, the other one kind of has the energy sucked away from it. So your amygdala is the unconscious part of your brain. So that triggers first to any sort of stimulus or perceived threat. And that is linked to long-term memory as well. So that's why it's really easy to develop biases and triggers and not really be conscious of them, because of that fear response, because of that stress response. And the only way to really calm your amygdala is with conscious effort to calm your body, to help calm your brain, reduce the level of cortisol in your body, and to increase the level of serotonin and dopamine and those healthier neurochemicals that activate your prefrontal cortex. With the stress response, you have adrenaline and cortisol that trigger that fight or flight response that can be very empowering for people when they're angry and they're upset and they feel this rush of adrenaline and they want to attack, they want to fight, they want to do something. The practice when you're in that state to really get to that critical thinking and problem solving area is to be aware of how you're feeling and that there is a part of your brain that is behind that. And then the knowledge of knowing, how do I calm that part of my brain to engage this higher functioning part that is the prefrontal cortex that allows you to really analyze and observe. The amygdala is reactive, the prefrontal cortex is proactive. So it's your prefrontal cortex that's the one that needs to be engaged to really come to a solution to solve a problem. I use the term open mind as an acronym because we tend to throw this word around as though it's just something people should be able to do without understanding how the brain works. And that really, to have an open mind means that your prefrontal cortex is engaged and your amygdala is in a low stress or calm state. And your process for different kinds of change, can be different at different stages of life as well. So, as we age, our brain changes. As we age, we also deal with a lot more grief and loss and change. So these can be compounding factors of why, as a younger adult, it's easier to switch and to be an early adopter and to want change and want it to be fast and quick, because we are, our brain is more in an adaptable state, versus when we get older, our neural pathways have been forged. They're harder to change. We're dealing with more emotional trauma. We're dealing with more long-term memories and triggers that have been embedded in our brain. We possibly have PTSD. There's just a lot more that we're dealing with as we age that makes brain health and mental well-being and mental fitness even more important. I illustrated kind of the neurology that's behind grief to help illustrate that as well, because people are pretty familiar with the emotions, kind of what they see, but what's going on, again, under the hood, people aren't quite as familiar with that. It's really your brain trying to rewire and adapt to a new reality. That can be very painful. When something that used to bring you pleasure brings you pain, that can be a very painful process. And I use this gentleman who's highly flexible to illustrate the difference between adaptation versus conformity. So when we talk about change, what I challenge people to really be aware of is that not all change is healthful change. Part of our reaction to a perceived threat or to that stressful change is purposeful. It's to put us on pause. It's to make us aware, to alert ourselves to what may or may not be in our best interest. And so there's a neurological reason for why we first kind of deny or push back against that change and kind of fight against it, but to also understand the benefits of adaptation and the risks and stress involved with conformity. So adaptation, similar to flexibility, if you have never done a split, if your body and your muscle tissues and your nerves and your neurology and physiology haven't adapted and developed to that point of flexibility, if you just jump into the splits, you're going to tear something and it's not going to feel good. So adaptation is really about that process of stretching, about practicing, about building resilience that allows you to navigate change in an easier way, but to still be able to identify what's healthful change versus unhealthful change. Conformity is really complying in order to reduce risk. So when businesses have compliance, that's basically, here are things you need to do to avoid this risk. And there's a lot of stress that's involved with conformity. There's a lot of stress and cortisol that's involved with that demanding nature of change. A lot of people will say embrace change. What I like to say is rather embrace the challenge. So you can identify, again, healthful versus unhealthful. You can help reduce stress. You can help manage your stress, and you can help get to a healthier place in order to deal with that change. So when it comes to mental fitness tools and tips, think of balance, to be aware of your feelings, to be mindful about what's influencing your feelings, so you can get those neurochemicals kind of balancing out again. Flexibility, the basic concept of being gentle with yourself. So trying to shed that sense of shame, realize that you're human, that your brain operates in different ways, and that it's a matter of being able to embrace how you function rather than getting hard on yourself for how you function. So anything you can do to reduce stress, engage your prefrontal cortex, and really exercise that part of your brain. And then the importance of rest and recovery. Your body and your brain need time to recover. You need time to shed a bunch of neurochemicals that have built up during the day. That's really a healthful benefit of sleep. Drinking water, again, rehydrating and flushing a lot of waste and byproduct. Water is an essential part of brain health. Eating nourishing foods, keeping all those nutrients in your brain. Again, reducing stress, finding calm, engaging your prefrontal cortex and reduce cortisol in your system. And then ultimately strengthen endurance. So being mindful of what inspires you and motivates you. What are those things in life that bring you joy, that reduce stress, that increase dopamine, that get you excited? The workout sheets, one of them is the Sense. It's spelled SENC, but I pronounce it Sense because it's really about taking an inventory of what is influencing your perception and your senses. And then the 40 Fit Mental Fitness Assessment is kind of that advanced tool to be able to set achievable goals. So again, this goes into micro goals. This goes into identifying your overall goal, but then really setting achievable, actionable micro goals to help you get there. And then how you can apply mental fitness practices to achieve and support those goals by maintaining your motivation. That's all about feeling and doing your best by taking care of your brain.